Standing up in McKinney, this is According to Callus. It is June the 9th, the year of our Lord 2025, and we had a minor memorial, mostly on social media, for June the 6th, D-Day. We're going to revisit that at the end, I think. And June the 7th was the runoff day. Now, we had some very interesting results in the runoff. And before people read too much into it or get too bent out of shape, McKinney didn't go the way that I had hoped. But there's a lot of good news. There really is. People need to pay attention to that. And Frisco pulled a cat out of the hat. And I'll spend a little time talking about that here in just a minute. All right, before we get there, let me remind you, the show, it's morphed. You know, it was a full-time endeavor for a little while, and now it's down to one promised show a week, and when I'm doing really good, you'll get a second show. The show's not going to go away, but it has to change. Times change. Schedules change, priorities change. What does that mean? That means that I'm going to continue to do this. There are well over 700 episodes archived that are readily available. And you can see over time how some things have changed, but a whole lot stayed the same. And I'd like to believe I held firm and true to my principles and my ideals. That being said, you know, you have to acknowledge what's going on in the world around you and deal with it. So today is going to be a local day, right? We're gonna talk about the outcomes. And when I say we're going to talk, I'm going to talk. But I want you to consider what I have to say, and I want you to take it to heart. I don't claim to be an expert. I don't claim to know it all. Some that know me personally might say that occasionally I come off like that, but I try not to. I really do. I am not that arrogant to think that I know it all. So, the title for today's program is going to be Elections Will Not Save Us, But They Do Matter. Okay? Elections will not save us, but they do matter. All right, so from there, on with the program. Okay. So first things first. The mayoral race, the hotly contested mayoral race, honestly, probably the best candidate, the best possible candidate that we could have had run in McKinney, ran a very good race. He did a very good job. He was an excellent candidate, an excellent representative. Unfortunately, some of our own team preferred to go the other way, and we didn't win. The outcome was roughly 52.5 to 47.5. They call that a 5-point swing. So we're going to put a pin in there, right? 5% difference. Because we're going to revisit that shortly, I believe. But the major takeaway you need to get is the way it was framed was this was a right-wing Republican versus a soft Republican or a establishment Republican, right? And most of the framing got excessively abusive towards the end, courtesy of the outgoing mayor. I don't think anybody did anything out of line as far as candidates go, but there were some, let's say, questionable things done in the name of protecting or promoting your favorite candidate. And that comes back to bite you on occasion. So, the good news, of the less than 20% of the people that showed up to vote, nearly 48% of them don't mind being defined as hardcore Republicans. So that means in the city of McKinney, at least 48%, and I'm using a round number on purpose, Well, let's do it this way. At least 47% don't mind being lumped in as a right-wing extremist. Or they see past the nonsense just to understand that that was never the case and that was never truthful in the first place. That means the other 53%, and let's be fair here, any Democrat that runs in the city of McKinney is only going to top out at about 35%, maybe 40%, depending on who the Democrat is and where they are on the scale of reasonable, moderate Democrat and LaShady and Shemuel. That being said, there are a whole lot of moderate Republicans, or we would call them establishment Republicans, that sway back and forth. So that if they're uncomfortable with a candidate because they might challenge the status quo, they're going to stick to their guns in their candidate, or they're going to drift over and support a moderate or at least a reasonable Democrat. Okay? We watched that play out in District 3. And to be fair, the Democrat that won is an excellent candidate and has done a decent job as far as I could tell. And I say that as somebody that would be lumped in as one of those right-wing extremists. I don't subscribe to that. I've always said I'm a Ron Paul guy, not a MAGA guy, but I totally get MAGA. I do. I just don't necessarily get on board with all of it. That being said, I don't define myself like that. So you can call me what you want. It doesn't bother me. I'm over it. The flip side of this equation is Democrats get a say in all these municipal elections. This is not a Republican primary. In a Republican primary, if that's what was going on, Scott Sanford would have destroyed Bill Cox, but that's not what this was. This is a municipal race, which means Democrats get a vote too. And they get a legitimate vote, not like when they cross over to vote in the Republican primary, but a legitimate vote, which means 35 to 40% of all voters in McKinney are going to show up and vote for whoever they say or believe is the most Democrat-friendly candidate. That doesn't mean they're a Democrat. It doesn't mean that they're even necessarily a squish or even, I would say it's fair to call them a moderate, okay? But it's also very fair to say they're establishment, right? They're going to maintain the status quo, what the established order is. And the way it is right now, Democrats are treated very well. They are given a very even treatment. And to be fair, I kind of okay with that. I think we need to be good to our neighbors. We need to treat our neighbors fairly. So they're going to support the person they think that's best going to treat them. Or, I'm sorry, the one that's going to treat them best. Wow, hang on a second. Clearly I needed more caffeine this morning. At the end of the day, though, every Republican that's running against another Republican in a municipal race has to overcome the fact that if the Democrats get energized, if they get involved, they're looking at their opponent already having, and we're going to just say 30% to 35% of the vote right off the top. Because there's some Democrats, by and large, that won't show up and vote anyway. So at the high end, they get 40. At the low end, it's going to be 25 or 30. So if you just say they're good for 35% of the vote, and I'm throwing different numbers in there, and I'm doing that on purpose because it's very fluctuating. A lot of it has to do with how scared are the Democrats, how involved are they in what's going on in this election cycle, and they were very spooked, I guess I can use that word. They were scared because of how Scott Sanford was portrayed. Not who he is, not what he represents, but what they think and believe he is. That falls on the feet of the campaigner-in-chief. So, again, let's recap our numbers here. Roughly 47%, that means almost half of all McKinney is very right of center. they voted for Scott Sanford. The other 53%, maybe a little over half of them, are in fact, we'll call them moderate Democrats or left of center voters, which means that at least 60% of the city of McKinney would identify as Republican. I would even go so far as to say 65% on the high end of your average voters are going to identify as Republican. The issue is that 20 to 25% are, quote unquote, the establishment moderate Republicans. And this has always been the thing I've been cautioning people about. As Republican activists, as conservative activists, you cannot spend all your time decrying and abusing the moderates in our party. We need them to win. We need to make peace with them. We need to find a way to work with them. Yes, I know some of them have things that we're uncomfortable with. Some of them believe things that, well, are problematic. But at the end of the day, they're still on our team and we need them to win. If you continue to ruin that relationship, you continue to ostracize them from the Republican branding. If you spend all your time on this purity process, right? If you're going to continue to be purity posers, you're going to continue to be Puritan in nature and expel anybody that disagrees with you, you're going to lose. You're going to purify the party into irrelevance. Now, I believe that the 20 to 25% that voted for Bill Cox, a majority of them actually like what City of McKinney is, and they want to continue on that path. A majority. I don't know what that number is. And then some of the other moderates, they're just not on board with what Scott Sanford was painted as being. They're uncomfortable with the Donald Trump thing, which is funny because they overlooked that our now former mayor's attitude and behavior pattern was nearly the same, if not more egregious, as the current president's. But be that as it may, the good news is for McKinney, we're still a very Republican city. We really are. Moderates that identify as Republicans, even if they're establishment types, they're on our side. We just have to find a way to work with them. We have to find a way to bury the hatchet, if you will. We have to quit fighting amongst ourselves. And remember, the real problem is the leftist progressive Democrat. The ones that want to upend everything. And I know there's going to be a lot of my friends, a lot of my allies that are going to be put off by this. But it's the truth. Now, my friend Kyle, he probably took a step too far. I mean, he's my friend. I've got his back. I'm not going to pretend that, nothing happened that and that there wasn't maybe a misstep there. But at the end of the day, I know where his heart was. I know what he was trying to accomplish. And I'm going to give him the grace. And I'm going to give him the courtesy that he believes that he was doing the right thing. And I would encourage our mutual friends out there, those in the social media sphere, give the guy a break. He's done more work and put in more effort to help other Republicans and other conservatives in this state in the last, we'll say 8 years, than a lot of people have done in a lifetime. So maybe you think he went soft, maybe he went squished. That's your accusation. I'm here to tell you that's not the case. Maybe he went and did the kumbaya at the wrong time. I've already discussed that with him. I think we're on the same page. But you can't hold that over the guy's head. You can't abuse him for that. You can't write him off because he didn't do something that you thought he should do. That's just foolish. Again, it's just disappointing. People make mistakes. People screw up. Nobody is perfect. Whether you want to bring up our AG, our better senator, they make mistakes. Even though there are champions the vast majority of the time, they make mistakes. So if you don't have a little grace and you can't be willing to understand that, well, maybe they saw something here that you didn't see, or maybe there was something else going on that you didn't know, maybe you got to reconsider that. Just saying. back to where I was. where I was going. So, like I said, I'm confident the city of McKinney is 60% Republican, solid Republican. Now, of that 60%, yeah, maybe 10 or 15% of the 60%, which is a bigger number, but so maybe they're moderates, maybe they're establishment, maybe they cut deals with the left because they're afraid of us. But you got to ask yourself, why are they afraid? What is it that they're concerned about? How do we address those? How do we find a way to do right by our community? Now, one of the other things that played out is there was a lot of criticism on involvement within the city. Now, if you talk to any elected official that's being honest, they'll tell you it's exhausting. They'll tell you it's like they're never off. A guy that spent 10 years representing HD 70 before it got relocated and was going down to Austin and campaigning, whatever else, he took the time off to be with his family. He earned his break. And if you want to criticize that he wasn't doing, quote, enough, or he wasn't doing the right things in your mind, okay, well, we're never going to convince you. That's fine. And you'll note I haven't bashed the other guy, Bill Cox. I haven't said anything negative about him because, honestly, I don't have anything really negative to say about the guy. I have concerns. We'll spend a minute talking about those later. But he's won. The game is over. We have to now play with the next hand we've been dealt. We'll see how that works out. Before we get there, let's take a brief interlude and discuss Frisco. Now, for those of you that haven't been paying attention, the Collin County side of Frisco has gone through a demographic change of significant order. I guess it's fair to say that there is a majority of Desi's there now, and that's their word, not mine. I'm not entirely sure what the exact definition is or the exact meaning is, but we'll just say South Asians to make it easy for you. They have a very high in-group preference. That's baked in. My understanding is they'll even overlook the religious differences. Now, that might not be hard and fast rule, but that's my understanding. And as you may know, a majority of South Asians are typically Hindu. A very strong minority, or maybe we'll call it a plurality, I guess it would identify as Muslim. And then you've got a couple other things in there. So apparently, again, this is just a white guy looking at this and having talked to a few people. It's more important to them to have somebody that is from South Asia representing them than what they believe. The in-group preference. Now, if it were me doing this, it would be called racism. If it was me doing this, it'd be basically a criminal act, particularly in the business world. But again, it's a different culture, a different way of looking at things. And while I might not be a fan of it, it behooves me to at least understand it and know what's going on here. So if you look at the race outcome coming out of Collin County, Gopal, who we're going to be generous and say is left of center, took not quite 54% of the vote. He was ahead of Jared Elad by 350 votes. Now, Jared Elad makes no bones about he's a Jewish guy that's also a conservative guy, right? So, 46-53. On the flip side of this, with nearly identical vote totals here, there were less voters in that race, so I think that accounts for most of the difference. Bert Thacker had 52% of the vote, and Tammy had 47% of the vote. And when I say 52, I mean 52 and a half, and when I refer to Gopal, he had not quite 54. So we're talking about a 1.5% difference here, or total votes, Bert actually received 103 votes more than Gopal. What's the defining difference here? They're on different ends of the spectrum here, politically speaking, or at least nominally, yet they got nearly identical turnout and vote totals. Now, fortunately for the city of Frisco, Denton County portion rescued them. Rode in on the white horse. Yes, that's a bad pun. Sorry. Very sorry. Oh, I might have to edit that out. No, probably not. It's a joke. Everybody, I hope you get it. I get it. Whatever. Okay, so for the Frisco totals, Jared Elad picked up 2,000 votes on the Denton County side, whereas Gopal only picked up 200 votes. Oh, I'm sorry, that's early votes. My apologies. Let me back up a second here. He picked up just under 4,000 votes. Okay, so he went from 3,200 to 7,100. Gopal picked up, let's go with 2,800. That's a massive swing there. Massive. Now, if we look over at the Bert Thacker race, he picked up, oh, see, I knew I did this wrong. I'm sorry. Well, yeah, so, no, I got it right. Okay, I did the math in my head. It was close. Look, I'm just going for close here, folks. He picked up his lead because Bert Thacker identifies as being conservative. Tammy, on the other hand, not even close. Everybody knows. I believe the term cabal has been used for both her and Gopal. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I'm not there. So, Bert Thacker appears to have strengthened his lead overall. He picked up an extra 2 percentage points. Whereas Jared Elad flipped the script. He was down 46, essentially 54. And after Denton County was added in, he ended up winning at not quite 53 to 47. So what's the takeaway here? Well, one, the Denton County side of Frisco is definitely more conservative, definitely more Republican. I think some credit goes to my man Wamhoff out there. So, Patrick, if you're listening, kudos to you, sir. You delivered in your team. All right. Secondarily, and look, I know there's a lot of other people in Denton County, but he's the only guy I know and the only one I'm going to show any love to. But this shouldn't be lost. The phrase demographics is destiny has some truth to it. And if you look at the Collin County side, when you have near exact turnout from guys that are on the other side of the political spectrum here, and to be fair, Gopal does identify as a Republican. To be fair, he's probably center. Okay, I don't think he's a crazy lefty. I think that's maybe a fair assessment. Now, my man Patrick's probably beating me over the head through the air right now, but I think to the objective outside voter that really doesn't know any of the details, that's how he comes across. And if I'm not mistaken, the state rep Matt Shaheen endorsed him, so there's a little, repudiation maybe going on there too. Don't know, or that could be why he managed to win as highly as he did in Collin County. That could be a piece of it as well. But again, it should not be lost on anybody. Denton County's Frisco is the conservative heartbeat of Frisco, the city of Frisco. Without Denton County side, Frisco would be in some serious doo-doo, just my opinion. But fortunately, that's not the case, and we're going to move on to the other side here. And just what shouldn't be lost here either is it's about evenly split on the voters, total voters from side to side. So, all right, that's enough on Frisco. I think it was illustrative. That's where I was going with. All right, so we're talking about McKinney once more. Here's the deal. Your choice in McKinney, if you throw out the at-large race, because the at-large race is an entirely different ballgame. The conservatives were split, the Republicans were split, and the Democrats knew which one was going to probably give them a fair shake. So that's why it was, I believe, a very clear-cut win for Mr. Lynch. But it is what it is. Going forward, that's really what this boils down to. What do we do going forward? The election outcome, while it was disappointing for our specific candidate, right, should be reassuring, should remind everybody that we are a Republican city, that we are a conservative city. There's nothing to be upset about. Yeah, I get it. I'm not happy that Scott lost either. He was my preferred candidate. I endorsed him. I was happy that he was running. I thought he was an excellent candidate. But everything under the sun was thrown against him. Now, that's what we're going to investigate for just a couple of minutes here. I wasn't sure what was going on. Because, like I said, I don't know Bill Cox. I imagine at some point I might meet the guy and talk to him for more than a minute. Because I have met him. From what I understand, he's a pretty good guy. And he knows his business. That's all fine and dandy. And from what I understand, he cares about the city of McKinney. His family's been very involved. Okay, that's all fine and dandy as well. So you really have a choice between two competent candidates that are both more than capable of doing the job with maybe a slightly different vision of what that looks like. So you got to ask yourself, why does the outgoing mayor go all in on this race? I mean, slanders a pastor, both a preaching pastor and an executive pastor. He slandered them both, in my opinion. Painted with the extremely rude and excessive broad brush of calling anybody that would support Scott Sanford a right-wing extremist. I mean, those might not have been his exact words, but that's certainly what he was implying. And even when he made the video with Kyle, he doubled down on it. Well, look, you got to play your nuanced game, and maybe it scared a few more Democrats to show up and vote. That's clearly what it looks like to me. But I'm not disappointed with the outcome. Overall, the Republicans won the day, and they won big. And they won big enough that both guys in the one were identifiable Republicans. Both of them said they were conservative. Now, whether or not that's going to play out to be true, don't know. But I got to ask myself, why would the outgoing mayor campaign harder for the candidate that ultimately won than that candidate campaigned? What's going on that he was so vested in the outcome? I don't believe that there was 3 bills that Scott Sanford voted for that was sufficient evidence to suggest that he hated anything or that he wanted to work against the best interests of the city. And after 10 years of the legislature, and you can only pony up with 10 bills that he happened to vote for, it's kind of weak. So you resorted to name calling and, quite frankly, wild exaggerations, inciting people, essentially. And to be honest, you kind of got a free pass on it. But what's more disappointing to me is you had one pastor that maybe crossed the line. I'd say he danced on the line. I am never in favor of any pastor telling me who to vote for by name. That's not in my repertoire. I don't mind them referencing issues. I don't mind them referencing, specific concerns. But you don't talk about names. You just don't do that. That's across the line, or at least dancing very hard on it. Especially when it comes across like you're telling somebody to vote one way or the other. Ironically, though, this never seems to be a problem in churches that are not white evangelical churches. Tell me why that is. But, that's a different story. And then allegedly, this email was sent out to all these other pastors. Now, first of all, what pastors and what denominations? Basically, demanding they hold an evangelical pastor accountable for violating the Johnson Act, which apparently the outgoing mayor is not actually familiar with the Johnson Act, amendment, the Johnson Amendment under 501c3 and how that works and what the proper application is. But it didn't matter. He created a stir. He got what he wanted. But you got to ask yourself, why? What was so god-awful important that you had to slander a good man because he dared to say something that didn't help your candidate? It just doesn't sit right with me. I mean, yeah, we have other former mayors that have endorsed other candidates, or that they've shown up for photo ops, or maybe they've donated some money. And okay, I get that. They want to secure a legacy. They're like-minded. They're friends. We all get that. But this race is really weird. I mean, it was kind of almost like he was campaigning to be mayor again. He was just going to have this guy stand in for him. I mean, I'm going to just guess that 48% of the people in the city of McKinney figured that out. I'm just going to guess. I mean, I'm not a fan of the guy. No, I'm not saying he did everything bad. I'm not saying he's a terrible person or anything like that. But you didn't get a third term. Now you're going to have a third term by proxy, maybe. We'll see. I saw the video with the mayor-elect celebrating, announcing that he's in fact a real person. Great, glad to hear it. But are you going to be your own man? That's my question. Are you going to be your own man? Will you be able to say, well, now I'm the mayor. I'm going to do things the way I think is best. Or I'm going to work with the council the way I think is best. Are you going to be able to articulate your own ideas? Are you going to be able to stand on your own 2 feet? Because in the campaign, you really didn't. In the campaign, it kind of looked like Obama-Biden. When that race was going on, there wasn't really anybody voting for Joe Biden. They were voting for Barack Obama. And maybe that's not fair because you both identify as Republican. Fine. But it's an analogy. And granted, it's not a perfect analogy. If you prefer, we'll say it's Reagan-Bush. Though I have a really hard time comparing the outgoing mayor to Reagan. But be that as it may, one of them was really good at articulating and communicating and exciting people, and the other was just an apparatchik along for the ride. An apparatchik. And now that apparatchik was put in power, yeah, things didn't work out so well for us, did it? With either Bush the senior or Joe Biden. But again, people are going on the era of good feelings. And let's face it, at the end of the day, McKinney is a wonderful town. It's bigger than the city council. It's not defined by the city council. There's a whole lot going on in the city and indeed the county that supersedes anything government could do. Because as I said, the elections aren't going to save us. They matter, but they're not going to save us. The community has to figure out what they want to do. They have to work together. They have to overlook the minor slights, the little jabs, and whatever else. The outcome is, what do we make of it? Now, I have no doubt that Scott Sanford's going to go back about his life. He joked about going back to being a grandparent and playing pickleball. I would like, and this has been historically the case, I would like for the mayor-elect Bill Cox to have the courage and the courtesy to offer Scott Sanford a role somewhere in city government, whether it's on a board or a committee. Be a man. You won. Put your hand out. Extend across the aisle. Yeah, we know, we heard you say it's our McKinney, meaning you and the people in the basement. That's great. But your McKinney is the McKinney of 50,000 people. McKinney now has 225,000 people. Your McKinney has a responsibility to reach across to the other people, to the defeated foes. You know, it's been a standard procedure, is my understanding, that the winner of the city council race puts his hand across to the person that they beat and say, well, where would you like to serve? What could I appoint you to? How would you like to help the city? Now, that didn't happen for me personally. And again, I want to be clear about this. My understanding is that was the break with tradition. I'm not upset. I'm not mad. I've gone on to do other things. And I'm perfectly content with where I'm at as far as that goes. But I've known several other people that have run and then were appointed or suggested to serve in other ways. And they've been able to, quote, build a resume or be more involved. I mean, even Tammy Warren, for Pete's sake, who everybody was hating on in that election, she got appointed to something. And I don't remember if it was George that did it or somebody else, because she was given an opportunity. Somebody who had enough grace to say, you know what, we're not going to agree on a whole lot of stuff, but I think you have something of value to add here. Now, I would like to see Dre Feltus, Dr. Feltus, reach across and say, Tammy, we had a rough race, but I think you're a decent person. I want you to serve somewhere. What would you consider doing? Now, I don't know if that's going to happen, but I certainly would appreciate that being made public. I mean, if we're going to say that McKinney's bigger than that, if we're going to say that partisan divide shouldn't matter in McKinney, then those that win need to demonstrate that. Those that win need to lead by example. I'm curious if that's going to play out. We'll see. So, final thoughts. Collin County is not in the danger that some people would like you to believe. Collin County's municipal races have been a mess for quite a while. One, because the party people think that you can run a partisan, hardcore Republican and win a race that is not, quite frankly, a Republican primary. The proper time and place for hardcore Republican partisan people to run is in a Republican primary where they have a decent chance of winning the general election, because there's only two choices, a Republican and a Democrat. But for now, while we have quote-unquote nonpartisan races in the municipal level, we're going to have to make peace and find a way to work with all the moderates in our party so we don't scare them off and push them to cut deals with the Democrat or the leftist progressive Democrats to keep us at bay. If we quit abusing them, quit treating them like they are the enemy, perhaps there's a way forward. Perhaps there's a way we maintain Collin County in a very good place for a very long time. But that's going to require the purity posers to calm down. That's going to require some people to be able to check their egos and reach their hand across. Now, for some of us, it means we're going to have to reach across to the left a wee little bit. Now, I'm not suggesting left of center, but I am suggesting maybe closer to the center. It's going to require for some of us to do it. Now, I understand there's a lot of folks that are uncomfortable with that. They're unwilling to do it. I get it. I respect that. And I appreciate it, because you're the folks that are going to hold other people accountable when they drift a little too far to the left. That's a good thing. But on the flip side, to the moderate folks out there, you need to grow a little bit thicker skin and realize just because people are being critical of you doesn't mean they hate you. Just because they're not going to pretend that you're different than them, that they don't want you around. A lot of times we see each other, and I'm guilty of this a little bit too. I mean, I think I'm a lot better than I was 10 years ago, but, you know, it's a maturing process. Yeah, you see the other part of our team is like that uncle that you don't necessarily want to hang out with. They come to the party, they get a little tipsy, they maybe get a little off color in their remarks. So their family you don't want to ostracize them and toss them out, but you just don't want to spend a lot of time around them. I get it. Been there, done that. We all own those t-shirts, but we also need to grow up. We need to understand that that's our family and we need to work together. So, again, the elections are not going to save us, but they do matter. And the way we win those elections is by putting aside the petty differences, by putting aside the petty grievances, by putting aside the minor deviations, whether it's of style or principle, and focus on the big picture. So again, while I didn't get the particular outcome I was looking for in McKinney, and I'm very grateful that Denton County Frisco bailed us out of what might have been a problem there in Frisco City of, let's do this. Let's do this. And with that, this has been According to Callus, and I've gone quite long today, so I will see you on the other side.
Wanted. Young men to rebuild Western civilization. Must be unafraid of pain, blisters, intellectual rigor, and a lifetime of long shifts with swords and shovels, digging ditches, repelling invaders, and reading stacks of books taller than their fathers. Must be impervious to manipulative women of all sorts, giggling virgins, cyber skanks, and even full cauldrons of Karens or hand-wringing clergy, but always seeking to hear and heed the words of Lady Wisdom. Immune to the leadership of hypocrites and LARPing online masculinitods, unaffected by abusive authorities, petty professors, and all brokers of official respectability, willing to hoist the Jolly Roger and Johnny Cash's favorite finger whenever faced with idolatry. Long-suffering joy and determination required. Must be willing to dwell among the tombs and graves of the long dead, seeking truths that cannot die. Exhaustion guaranteed. Conflict guaranteed. Mortality guaranteed. New St. Andrews College. Liberal arts for the undaunted.